schools around here, about 7 schools around here, tabled it, do you remember it? Let's call the meeting to order, please. Please take the roll.
Mayor Zakowski.
Here.
Alderman Kittle.
Here.
Alderman Vrees.
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier. Alderman Gartner.
Here.
Alderman Volkert.
Here.
Alderman Montello.
Pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Hear a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed.
I'll make the motion to adopt agenda.
Second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Any public comments?
Nobody signed in.
No public comments. Do you hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? And then also, I just want to mention that we did get 3 donations, also a $250 donation from Quick Trip to the New Richmond Fire and Rescue Department chili feed. Also water and ice from New Richmond Walmart for the ceremonial groundbreaking for the new library. And complimentary shuttle service from Basin buses for the ceremonial groundbreaking for the new library. We are motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll offer that motion to approve the
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. New business. 2023 Auditors Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amanda Mopa is with us from Baker Tilly this evening. She's the manager on our audit. And as she was making the way to the podium, in your packet is the overview that Amanda's going to walk through the slides and the results of our 2023 audit and ask if there's any questions. Certainly feel free to ask Amanda as she's presenting that information. There is not a formal action that's required from the council this evening in regards to this. Is just for information. So I'll turn it over to you, Amanda. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. As Rand said, I'm Amanda Mboga. I'm the manager on the city's audit. And I'm here tonight to go over some of the highlights from the 23 audit, focusing really on the governmental fund side of things. We did have a separate presentation with the Utility Commission for the enterprise fund side of things. So that's where we'll focus. We'll go over the independent auditors report and some financial highlights, as well as a little bit on the report on federal and state awards, which is a new thing this year, at least for the recent past anyway. All right, so independent auditors report. This does include our opinion, and the city did receive an unmodified, or what we sometimes call a clean opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that you can get from an audit. And that indicates that we do believe the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. Management's responsibilities include the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, as well as the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls. They also evaluate whether there are any conditions or events that would raise doubt as to your ability to continue into the future, which we call a going concern. On the auditor's responsibilities, we're responsible for expressing opinions on the financial statements based on our audit. We're required to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are materially misstated. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute. And materiality can be kind of a subjective concept. So for purposes of the audit, we would consider a statement to be material if there is a substantial likelihood that it's going to impact the decision-making process of the users of the financial statements. And procedures selected depend on auditor's judgment, including our risk assessments and our understanding of internal controls at the city. Go on to some of the financial highlights, starting with the general fund balance. The blue lines here are the 2023 actual, and then the black is 22 for comparison. So you can see the top line there being the total. Your fund balance did increase for 2023. It was about a 7.5% increase. And the largest portion of that is the unassigned category. So that's the second set of rows there. That's the portion that's available for just general operations, cash flow and contingency purposes, really important portion of your fund balance. And then assigned is for internal designations, which would include things like your budget carryovers as well. And non-spendable is either not in spendable form or it will eventually be converted into cash, but not for so long into the future that you don't want to count that as an available resource right now. So last year that did tick up a little bit because there were some additional long-term advances. As those advances came down in '23, the non-spendable balance came down as well. And we'll use these in a couple slides as well. We do want to do a real quick summary of the budget here. So you can see your actual for the year was a net income, positive change in fund balance of about $269,000. The final budget with all the amendments was budgeting for a very small loss of about $3,000 or $4,000. So overall, positive budget variance of about $273,000. And you can see the majority of that is in the revenue category, specifically the miscellaneous revenue. And the largest portion of that would have been the insurance proceeds, actually. Fund balance categories, I'm going to skip that for now. We already talked about that on the previous slide. Okay. So this is one of the, probably the key indicator for financial health of a general fund, is looking at your unrestricted fund balance, which would include both the unassigned and the assigned categories from the first slide. And then, oh, go ahead.
Correct. So underneath our unrestricted fund balance policy that we adopted, we look at it from a twofold lens. So the one metric that Amanda's presenting on this is how we kind of looked at fund balance previously as just as a whole, and then the GFOA guideline. The policy that we recently adopted looks at it from the revenue side and perspective as one target. So certainly what's in front of you is one of those targets. But the second target then is the combined fund balance of the major funds in addition to the city's funds, which is conducive to how Moody's credit rating agency views unrestricted fund balance as a whole too. So we have two targets that we're reaching underneath both of those guidelines. So this is just illustrating one guideline, but it's using the GFOA recommendation, which our target for this guideline is between.
Okay, thank you.
And we could add additional information on that as well if you guys want in the future to look at it as a combined total as well. So we really don't have that piece, just looking at the general fund specifically. But so for 2023, when we do the calculation, and this particular one is based on revenues. You can do it either revenues or expenditures, either one. This particular one is based on revenues. So for 2023, when we do the calculation, we get 47.1%. And what that means is that in theory, you could operate the general fund for 47% of a year without any new revenues coming in, just collecting all those receivables you have outstanding. You can see that's up from the previous year, and actually the highest that it has been in the past 5 years. The red line at the bottom here is what Rand mentioned for the GFOA recommended minimum. So they recommend no less than 2 months, which comes out to about 17%. And I would say that's bare bones minimum. You don't want to be below that. You for sure want to be above that. So that's good. You haven't had any problems being significantly above that in the recent past. The other benchmark on here is the individually plotted black dots are from our own internal Baker Tilly client data. So for entities of similar size, the median result for them. And so you can see you've been above the median for the past 2 years for sure. We don't have 2023 information yet. That'll be added next year. But for 2022 and 21, you were above and then pretty much right on in 2020.
So at the end of 2023, we had about a 6-month balance there if we
Right.
needed the money?
Yep.
Okay.
That one. We'll look a little bit more at the debt side of things then. So your general obligation debt is limited under state statutes. It's 5% of the equalized value. And so the top number here is the percent that you have used of that limit, which is 24%. That means you have plenty of legal capacity to borrow, should you need to do that. And on the chart here, the bottom line in blue is your actual geo debt outstanding. Top line, again, is that debt limit, so you can see just how much of a gap you have between those two. The makeup of that general obligation debt is in the table below. So the majority of it is city-related, although there is a pretty good chunk that's also utility. So both of those are included in here. One thing that's not included is the revenue debt for the utilities. So they have some debt that is not subject to the general obligation limit because it is secured by specific revenue streams from those utilities. Those bonds do require certain earnings ratios and that sort of thing, so there are other requirements that go along with those. Right, another way of looking at the debt, the general obligation debt, is the debt service compared to non-capital expenditures, just to see kind of how debt-heavy your expenditures are. We exclude the capital outlay because that just varies so much, it would be hard to establish a trend with that in there. So when we do the calculation comparing principal and interest payments to your other non-capital expenditures, again, on the blue line here, you can see for 2023, it comes up to 22.3%. The bond rating agency is the red line here. That's a recommended maximum in this case. So in this case, you would like to be below the red line if possible, and you're very, very close to that. Again, we have the individually plotted black dots on here, which are the median for other Baker Tilly clients of your size. But there is quite a bit of variation between clients on this, and so we also have the high reference on here with the X's. So those would be the maximum that was reported for any of those years. So again, not a big concern, though you're over it slightly. That has been the trend over the past 5 years, and it has actually come down over the past couple of years as well. Report on federal and state awards, otherwise known as the single audit report. You don't necessarily need a single audit every year, and the city has not had one for quite a few years now, but for 2023, you did exceed the federal threshold of $750,000 in federal expenses. So in that case, you have to have another kind of additional audit that's more grant focused on compliance and in reporting for grants. Total federal expenditures for 23 were $965,000. That threshold is going to be going up to $1 million in the pretty near future, so they'll have a little bit more cushion there. The programs that we tested were the highway planning and construction on the federal side. And then the state of Wisconsin also piggybacks on top of that. So they say if you qualify under the federal requirements, then they also want you to look at the state grants. So the transit operating aids is what we looked at on the state side. It's the taxi program. So this report has not been issued yet. We did do the field work for this later than the financial audit. It will be issued by the end of the month when it's due to the federal government. The majority of the testing is complete, though, and we don't have any findings or any concerns to note at this point. Still subject to review, though. I do want to give a big thank you to the city staff for preparing for the audit and helping us through all of our questions as we go along. It's no small undertaking, we realize that, and especially with the new GASB standards that have been issued in recent years, there's a lot of additional information gathering and analysis that has had to happen over the past couple of years. So definitely appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into that They're very well prepared for us. And that is what I had for prepared comments, but certainly welcome any questions if anyone has.
The debt service and fund balance, cities of equal population, how do we look compared to them in both of those areas?
For the fund balance one, back. Okay, so for fund balance, you look very good, because the black dots on here, and again, I don't have the 23 info yet, but for 22, the median on that was 37.6, and you were up at 40.8. So you've been in excess of the median for, I guess, actually technically the past 3 years, but 2020 was pretty much spot on with what we were seeing other communities having. The debt one is a little bit higher than the median. The median for 22 on this one was 16.7%, and you were up at 21.3. So it's not a very big difference, but it is above the median.
Would that be because we're a growing community compared to other?
It could be, it could be. And it could be when you have to, if you're not borrowing for a lot of projects, your ratios probably are lower. If you're having to borrow because you are growing and expanding, that would make sense that you're going to have more debt service payments than communities that are not doing that.
Coming, and thank Rayanne and her crew for putting all the time into this. I know this doesn't happen overnight. It's a big project, getting all this, gathering all this, and getting good approval from your company on what we're doing here. Thank you. Next item, electric rate cost of service study.
As Nicole was making her way to the presentation, we just wanted to give a little bit of background, and then Nicole Gould is here with WPPI, which we are a member utility of WPPI. So this evening in your packet is information in regards to our electric utility. In 2021, we conducted a cost of service study. And during that evaluation, we had been planning for and anticipating the substation upgrades that would be occurring. And so at that stage, we were anticipating to have a updated rate case study as well in 2024. And so WPPI has concluded and completed that initial update to the cost of service study, which Nicole will go over this evening. In 2021, we could not incorporate the substation projects in our test year, but now we are at a stage where we can incorporate that in our request, which is what is bringing the filing forward for your evaluation this evening. So this was presented to the Utility Commission last week on Wednesday. It was recommended with unanimous decision to bring forward to the City Council for your review, and then the next step would be tonight for the council to determine if we should file the rate application with the Public Service Commission, which is the governing and regulatory body for the electric utility. They have a process as well, so it's about a 200-day process when we submit a rate application with the Public Service Commission. So although we're talking about the rates today, we would not anticipate these rates to go into effect until 2025, potentially early 26, depending upon the PSC's evaluation and review of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole. Thank you for making the trek up here this evening. We appreciate it. Again, feel free to ask questions along the way with Nicole's presentation. There is quite a bit of information, good information involved in here. And then I'll turn it over to you, Nicole. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me. This is actually the third time I've worked on New Richmond's application. So way back in 2013, as Rayanne said, in 2022 you had new rates. And the proposal we have before you today, obviously the main reason that we have this application would be to factor in the costs associated with the Highview and the Knowles substation projects. And that was outlined in a Certificate of Authority, which was docket 4139 CE 104. So, as Brianne said, there's several steps involved in the rate application process. So we have pulling together the application itself. We would submit it to the Public Service Commission, which is the governing body. We would notify customers of the proposed increase in rates through a bill insert. The PSC would review the application. As she mentioned, there's a 200-day, and this is a guideline, not a rule for the PSC, that they would work through the application. After that, we would plan the expected implementation date based on the meter reads for your customers' bills. So typically the first of the month is when new rates would go into effect. And after the PSC reviews everything, they issue a final order which has the new rates with their requested effective date. There's 3 parts to a rate application. The first part is just the revenue requirement. How much money or revenue does the utility need? And this would be operation and maintenance expenses. And again, your last rate change was in September of 2022. At that time, it was only a 3% increase to rates. I believe it was around $300,000. The cost of service study is the second part, and there we try to evaluate if the revenues will recover the utilities costs as it's broken out by rate class. We know that the cost to serve customers varies by customer type. As you move up in the size of the customer, the larger industrial customers, it should cost less on a per kilowatt hour basis for those customers. And the third part is just the rate design. How should we collect those revenues from the various customer classes? We want to try to set up fixed and variable costs and have those aligned. So your fixed charges would be things like your customer charge and your distribution or demand charge. And finally, how can we set up price signals so that hopefully we can lower that customer's bill, which in turn would lower it for the utility overall. This next page is an income statement for test year 2025. So we're able to incorporate, because it's a test year 25, we're able to incorporate all those changes from that CA for Highview and Knowles. Based on the utility's 2025 operating and capital budgets, we're projecting the utility will earn an operating margin of -1%. So the utility is requesting a rate increase of 6.61%, or $812,103. And this is to earn a fair margin of 6.5%. The PSC has a formula that they use to determine the rate of return. Unlike an investor-owned utility, the PSC, well, I guess I shouldn't say unlike. The utility, it would be based on a 20-year municipal bond index of Standards & Poor. And they would also take into account your debt equity ratio. So 6.5 is much lower than what you would see with an investor-owned utility. So as I mentioned, there's several factors that are included in the rate design. We looked at the cost of service study results. We try to recover those fixed costs through fixed charges. We do look at your comparison to investor-owned utilities, which in this case would be Excel. We look at the impact to customer bills, and we look at various price incentives that we can set up. This next table shows the cost of service results. So on the left, it shows what we estimate the utility will collect in the test year under the present rates. And on the right, it's the cost of service study of what should be collected according to each rate class if we were just to look at cost of service. This next page is a comparison of revenue based on present rates and what we are proposing for the rates. And again, this is just our proposal. Ultimately, the PSC is the deciding body for the retail rates. If we look at the impact to your average residential customer uses 722 kilowatt hours. They would see an increase of $6.98 on their monthly bill, or 7.9%. The average commercial customer uses 1,560 kilowatt hours, and they would see an increase of $17.13, or 9.2%. This next chart is a comparison of your revenue or your proposed rates compared to Xcel Energy. So as you can see, right now, even with the proposed rates that we have in the application, you're about 16% lower than Xcel Energy. This is using their base rates as of January 1 of 2024. So you're almost over $2 million lower than Xcel Energy. And then as part of your application, we also look at other impacts to customer bills. For residential and general service, we just take common thresholds for residential from 250 kilowatt hours all the way up to 1,500 to see the impact from low use customer to high use. And we do that for general service as well. And then for your CP rate classes, which is commercial power. So this first chart is and I really apologize for the small print. So if all these customers are privatized as well when we file the application. That is one of the rules for filing. So if we look at overall your CP1 rate class, which is a customer who uses 50 kW or more 3 times or more in a 12-month period, the overall impact is a 4.5%. The minimum impact to a customer is 0.27. The maximum is 11.63%. And it really depends on their various load factors and how they use electricity, their patterns. CP1, again, the overall rate class, there's only one customer, 3.69%. And then finally, we look at CP2. You have 21 customers in that rate class. The overall impact is 4.37% for the rate class. The minimum impact is just less than 1%. The maximum is 18%. And again, it's really dependent on their usage characteristics. And then these last pages are just an exact, here's on the left column what your present rate is, and on the right is an example of what the proposed rate could be. If you notice your PCAC, which is your Power Cost Adjustment Clause, that gets reset to 0 at the time of a rate application. So you would have a new U factor, which is your base cost of power, that would be set at the time of the rate case. And with that, I'll just open it up to questions.
So the last rate increase was 2 years ago?
September of 2022 is when the rates went into effect, and it was 3% or about $300,000.
So is the increase, a lot of it because of the big projects we're doing?
Yes.
That's the main driver?
Yes, that is the main driver. So your council has already approved doing the project. So this is the point where it meets the ratepayer. So
How you pay for it?
how do you pay for it? And I think it was very wise how the utility approached it. You know, a two-step application doesn't exist for municipalities. So prior to that, you hadn't had a rate change since 2013. So we did just a very small inflationary increase at that time, so that now when we're coming to you, it is 6.6%. I'm not trying to say that's small, but it's not a double-digit increase where it's rate shock to your customers. So I think it was very wise how they approached it.
Well, how often are we going to be checking this now? Like you said, 2013 to 2022. So how often are we gonna be doing this now, so we don't have a big rate increase?
Yeah, we recommend every 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years even. You know, just to make sure as you make your conversion to have AMI data as well, your cost of service studies are only going to improve. So you want to assign, to make sure there's no subsidies between rate classes as well. Is the overall collecting correctly, and is it collecting correctly between your rate classes?
Not, I guess, do I hear a motion to? What you,
This would just be a motion to authorize staff to file the application with the Public Service Commission
For rate study.
for a rate application. Correct.
So move. Second.
any other questions? Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item,
Thank you.
municipal assessment service contracts.
Mayor and council again. In 2019, the city went through a competitive RFP process to evaluate assessing services for the city. As a result of that RFP process, the city contracted with Accurate Assessing. And since then, Accurate Assessing has served as a statutory assessor beginning in January 1st of 2020. The current contract that we have with Accurate does take us through December 31st of 2025. And as part of the 2025 budget cycle and our discussion at the last work session, staff did inquire with Accurate what an extension, an option to extend the contract would look like. They did provide us with an option to extend to 6 years, so that would take us from January 1st of 2026 through December 31st of 2031 at an annual price of $48,000. This is just slightly more than what we currently pay at $45,000 and would provide the same level of service, that annual interim market revaluation for the next 6 years. From a staff perspective, we have been very pleased with Accurate's delivery of services, their interaction with the residents, the information that they provide during open book and board of review, and feel that they conduct their services in the best manner possible. And so from a staff perspective, we are recommending approval this evening for the 6-year contract that would extend that municipal assessment services from January 1st of 26 through December 31st of 2031.
Motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve the 6-year contract as presented.
Second.
Now questions, any questions for Rayanne?
Pending legal approval. We gotta still get that yet.
Correct.
Else? Take the roll, please.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, SCADA radio replacement.
Yeah, good evening. Staff recently bid out the replacement of half the SCADA radios in our system, so in our water and sewer system. The SCADA radios allow lift stations and wells to communicate with our SCADA equipment. They've been having a lot of issues with them in the last few years. They're approximately 15 years old. They have trouble getting parts for them. They're close to obsolescence. There's many of them that are failing, and we're having to steal them from less critical areas to put them in more critical infrastructure. So the plan was to do a phased approach. We had $50,000 budgeted for this year to replace half the SCADA radios. We put it out for bids. We got bids back from 4 different providers and installers. The low bid was from In Control at $26,547. Dave had done some research, and they're a reputable firm. They do good work. The radio that they had proposed was one of the ones recommended by our consultant, so he didn't have any issues with that. After the bids came in, Dave did reach out to them to find out what it would cost to replace all the SCADA radios in the system. They gave us a quote for an additional $26,509. So at the Utility Commission, it was decided that for an additional $3,000 over budget, that we could go ahead and replace all the SCADA radios in the system and be done with it. So at this time, we'd be looking for a motion to move forward with the project for the full replacement. And I can answer any questions. Hopefully Dave's not here, so yeah, this was kind of he ran with it, but I can try and answer questions.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve the Utility Commission recommendation that this bid be awarded to In Control, Inc. in the amount of $53,056 to replace all the SCADA radios this year.
Second.
I got Alderman Kittle on the second, yeah.
Questions
Oh,
now?
Pete?
I'll second it then too.
Okay, perfect.
3 seconds.
You won.
Pretty good.
Took 3 seconds to get.
Now, this was discussed at the Utility Commission, and we thought that in the budget, $50,000, what we thought was going to come back. The ability to do them all at one time really makes each other in the future. Felt like it was a no-brainer.
Got a question. What does SCADA stand for?
Oh, your supervisory control and data acquisition.
Very good.
I might have just made that up, but I think that's
It sounded good to me.
Dave, who?
Any other questions? Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Freeze.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is bid results, concrete work.
Yeah, Public Works staff bid out some concrete work, and it's multiple projects. It's a lot of little work around town, repairing concrete sidewalks, repairing ramps, repairing a center island median. There was also some work that was approved by the Park Board earlier in the year that would be some concrete work at Hatfield Park. So the part that would come out of the operating budget is about $12,000 for the concrete repairs. The remainder of the work would be funded through the ball associations, so there not really be any costs from the city. Oh, sorry, I'll back up. So we did get 3 bids. Q3 Contracting, Pembroke Companies, KP Concrete Construction. KP Concrete Construction came in at a low bid of $36,482.50. And like I mentioned, only about $12,000 of that is the actual coming out of the operating budget. The remainder would be through the Park Board, and it's through donations through the baseball and softball associations for concrete work at Hatfield Park. We have worked with KP Concrete in the past. Rob said they've done a number of repairs around town, and he does not have any issues with working with them. So at this time, it would be our recommendation to move forward with the low bid from KP Concrete Construction.
I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the low bid from KP Concrete Construction in the amount of $36,482.50.
I'll second that.
Questions?
Well, I just want to throw out there that this is a great example that speaks to the importance of getting bids. When you look at a low bid of $36,482, the next bid was $67,000, almost $68,000, and then the high bid was $91,000. So when you consider the difference, it just speaks to how important it is. And I appreciate the policy that the city we adopted here a couple years ago, requiring bidding in situations where we're spending. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the number is. That we require bids for, but this is just a great example of how important it is to get bids. It's a great savings for the taxpayers. But I also want to ask though, Eric, I know we talked about at Public Works, really the idea of, in fact, using hired concrete repair work as maybe more part of a plan, going forward.
Yeah, I think we'll revisit that this winter.
Yeah.
About moving forward, because some of this was, earlier in the year, we thought maybe staff would have time to tackle some of these, and they just do not have the time to do it, so that's kind of why we're bidding it out at this time. But yeah, I think moving forward, we can have that discussion this winter.
What's the main reason, I mean, for this huge variance? I mean, they're just throwing something at the wall and hope you'll grab it?
Yeah, it's that time of year. Some contractors might be looking for work and a lot are busy and just finishing up jobs that they're trying to finish for this year. So yeah, we might have got a couple that threw a number at it and hoped they were the only bidder and got awarded a good project.
Any other
Eric, I really appreciate also you put a timeline on this project, so it gets done yet this year. That's awesome. Great work.
Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Passes. Next item, bid results, storm sewer catch basin repair.
Yeah, me again. So you've probably noticed there's been some barricades in the one entrance at the Dick's Market for quite a while. There's a storm sewer catch basin in the driveway that has failed. So right now, the pavement of Knowles isn't getting undermined too badly. It has undermined a little bit. I would be reluctant to let it go too much longer through the winter and the spring, because we'd probably get some more undermining of the pavement there. So it'd be our recommendation to go forward with fixing that storm sewer catch basin. We did put that out for bids, and we got 4 bids back. The low bid was from Vinco Incorporated. We have not worked with them in the past, or I have not worked with them in the past. They have some pretty good recommendations. They've done a lot of work in the Twin Cities in the Met area. We have gotten a few bids from them recently. I think maybe they're trying to break into this area and get some work in Wisconsin. So at this time, I guess we would be looking to move forward with the low bidder, Vinco Inc., at $19,900 or $790.
Your motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer that motion that we approve the low bid from Vinco in the amount of $19,790.
Second.
Any questions?
I have how much will that disrupt traffic and how long of a process will that be, Eric?
It'll be we'll have to close one of the lanes of traffic.
Traffic
Yeah.
will still be able to move.
Yeah, traffic will still be able to get through that area. We'll have to close one lane. And typically concrete, if you do high early strength, you have to stay off it about 3 days before you can put traffic back on it. We'll work with them to get it back open as soon as possible.
Will that entrance into Dick's lot, will that reopen again then after that? Or is that going to be closed? No, it
Nope,
will
yep,
open again.
that'll
Okay.
reopen. Yep.
All right.
Any other questions? Roll, please.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, bid results, electric water shop improvements.
Yeah, earlier this year when we had awarded the project of expanding the water and electric shops, we had mentioned at that time there still was a number of deficiencies on the existing buildings that had to be taken care of. At that time, we had estimated that the cost of the existing deficiencies were around $200,000. Now that we're getting close to hopefully breaking ground and moving forward with the main project, where staff put out bids to address the deficiencies in the 2 existing buildings. Unfortunately, we only received 1 bid back, but it is the general contractor on the main project, and it is under what our estimated amount was. So we received the 1 bid from Berghammer Builders in the amount of $189,243. Staff feels like it was a good bid. They didn't know they were the only bidder when they submitted it, so we feel like we did get a good bid. So at this time, it'd be our recommendation to move forward with the 1 bid from Berghammer Builders.
Your motion.
I move to accept that bid.
I'll second it.
Eric, I've got a question on this. Many of this project is related to maybe cold because we're replacing heaters or we're fixing garage doors, insulated garage doors, that sort of thing. Will any of that stuff be completed prior to this winter? See, the deadline is July 1 of next year.
Yeah, much of this can be coordinated with the bigger project. So yeah, a lot of this work can be still completed this fall, winter, and luckily we have the same general, so it'll go pretty smoothly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll, please.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Motion passes. Bids for contracted underground construction.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The electric department also went out to bids for some work, and this was underground construction work where we put interduct underground to use as conduits for our cable and wire. We did receive 5 bids for a package of projects. These projects, a few of them are in the capital improvement plan, a few of them help address reject wood poles that we need to replace or move facilities underground, address reliability concerns, or are actually billable to a customer for an extension. With these bids, Q3 was the lowest bid, and by quite a large margin. They did have a clarification in their bid package, stating that if they can't install facilities through horizontal directional drilling, that they would use a hydrovac trench method at a cost of $55 per linear foot. So I do expect there to be some facilities installed through that method. I feel that $15,000 is kind of the range I would expect. So with that cost, they're still significantly lower than budget and lower than the other bids. So staff and the Utility Commission recommend proceeding with Q3 for the base price of $55,798.84 with that clarification of the $55 per linear foot on a hydrovac trench.
Before I make a motion, Wes, can we put is it possible to put a max on the $15,000 for the hydrovac, or are we just gonna have to leave that open at $55 a foot?
No, we could put a max on it. I did speak with them about kind of the risk of what if we had 1,000 feet that they wanted to install by hydrovac, and they were comfortable with allowing us to basically cancel any of the jobs if we felt that project cost was rising too high.
We can put a maximum of 15,000.
You could put a cap of $15,000 on there, correct?
Yes, yes. I'll make a move to offer the bid to Q3 in the amount of $55,798.84 with a maximum of $15,000 if hydrovac has to be used.
I'll second that.
Any
Or
other
do you need a
questions?
second on that? Ending it?
Nope, that was just my motion.
What was the motion? Okay.
Questions? Roll.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Passes. Next item, request authorization to solicit bids for traffic signal control.
Yeah, Public Works staff has been having a lot of trouble and issues with the intersection of 6th and Knowles. The traffic controls there are getting aged and deteriorating. Currently, the way it's operated is there's what's called loops in the road, and so there's a wire that's actually run in the concrete of the road, and it detects a vehicle when it gets there and knows when to trip the signals. If we were to replace that in kind, we'd actually have to tear up the concrete or saw cut a bunch of the concrete out to get those loops replaced. So it would be staff's recommendation to move forward with more of a camera-based system. It's similar to what is on North 4th Street by Quick Trip there. That intersection is run off cameras. It's easier to maintain and it provides us with more flexibility. Right now Rob did get an estimate and we're looking at about $27,000 to upgrade the control cabinet and move to the camera-based system. So right now we're just seeking approval to go out and get bids on this. No actual approval of the project yet.
I got a question for you, Eric. So if the, kind of based on traffic pattern, so we'll just say Knowles traveling north and south is the main thoroughfare there. And so the light is green. If traffic, just as an example, never pulled up on 6th Street west or east, right, into the intersection, would the light stay green, or does it still cycle through?
Yeah, it'd probably take longer, but it still would most likely cycle. And, that's another thing is the programming with this new system is a lot. Supposedly the one on North Fourth actually has some AI built into it, and it has some learning. It learns the traffic patterns. But and it's also something that we can easily change in the future if we had this system in. But yeah, I think the pause would be longer, but it would eventually cycle.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna offer a motion that we, I guess you're asking to let bids, or I'm reading the recommendation. It says to establish a contract to upgrade traffic signal controls. Am I,
Oh, yeah, sorry, up above, yeah, it would just to solicit bids at this time. We're not looking to contract anything.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, so, yeah, that we solicit bids for that work at that intersection.
Second.
Question, on Fourth Street there, Fourth and Knowles, are we ever looking at left turn, some deal there? Twice this week I've been there, one car got through, you couldn't turn left because of the traffic is getting heavier. To me, it seems like a problem trying to turn left at that intersection. And you have that, on Sixth Street, where you can have a left turn. Are we looking at Fourth Street at all? Fourth and Knowles?
Yeah, and sorry, I misspoke. The signals are at Quick Trip, not Fourth, that have the cameras. But yeah, there's a developer looking to develop that property that's off North Fourth Street.
I meant
and-
by Dick's.
Oh,
That's
by-
what I meant, excuse me.
oh,
I meant
okay.
by Dick's.
Oh, by Dick's. We can take a look at that. Yeah, I'm not, I can
Guys,
talk to Rob and we can take a look at that.
I've seen that before. One car can turn left because the traffic is heavy coming the other way, they can't turn. Like I said, it happened to me twice this week
Sure.
at that intersection, so I'm sure a lot of other people are frustrated with that too.
Yep, yeah, and I know like the city spent a lot of money on a master plan for that corridor a number of years ago. And some of the recommendations there were to have an inside turn lane. And so as we swap out these controls, we'll have to make sure that, we plan for the future so we don't have to do any major upgrades to the controls, and we're able to, if we do convert to that inside turn lane, and then that would allow for left turns. So if you don't have a dedicated lane for left turns, you can't have a left arrow, just by DOT guidance.
Grandfathered in.
Yeah, that's, that wouldn't meet current standards.
Oh, okay.
We'll just ignore that one.
I have a question. Does the camera system you're talking about, if somebody rides up on their bike to there, does it see that person and will it change the lights so they can get across?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got to loop around a couple of times.
Could be me. I don't know if I have to turn sideways or if I, just, okay.
Any other questions? Otherwise, take the roll, please.
Alderman Vrees,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes. Motion passes. Any communication or miscellaneous?
Just a reminder that the VFW Auxiliary is hosting the Moment of Silence in front of the New Richmond Fire Department on September 11th at 8:55 a.m. They have a short program starting. And then 10 days from today, absentee ballots go out in the mail for general elections. So it's certainly not too late to recommend yours. If you'd like one, you can contact the clerk's office.
Anything else?
Library groundbreaking is on September 27th, correct?
Yeah, the ceremonial groundbreaking is Friday, the 27th at 11 a.m. We will have, it was noted in the consent agenda, a complimentary shuttle service from the parking lot here at the Civic Center. And there will actually be a story time event for kids that morning at 10 o'clock on the site. And then the program itself will be at 11. So I would guess we'll be probably wrapped up by 11:45 or so.
Oh, what time was that again?
11 o'clock.
If not, do I hear a motion go into closed session for state statute 19.851G?
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
Second. Take the roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
We're in closed session.
This conference is no longer being recorded.